Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Need a powerful and entertaining way to ignite your next conference, retreat, or team building session? My keynotes don't include magic, but they do have the power to help your attendees take a leap forward by putting emotional intelligence into their employee engagement, and customer-centric leadership practices. So bring the infotainment creativity of the Fast Leader Show to your next event, and I'll help your attendees get over the hump now. Go to beyondmorale.com/speaking to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm thrilled because we have somebody that's going to help us with one of the most important aspects of leading others and ourselves, and that's asking questions. Bob Tiede grew up on a farm in South Dakota where he earned his PhD at age 9. That's when his dad conferred on him the title of PhD, standing for Post Hole Digger, after he successfully dug his very first post hole all by himself. Bob grew up in a very close extended family. His dad and his 3 brothers and 1 sister all had farms within 5 miles of each other. All 5 families, along with Grandma and Grandpa, went to the same church, and Bob and all of his cousins attended the same school from grades 1 through 12. Bob Tiede graduated from the University of South Dakota in 1971, where both he and his wife Sherry became involved with the Christian student movement now called Cru. Upon graduation, they joined the staff of Cru, where they have now served for 45 years. Bob serves on the leadership development team developing the next generation of leaders for Cru. Bob says in 15 to 20 years, almost all of our current Cru leaders will no longer be leading. In their places will be the leaders we are now developing. If we fail now, Cru does not fail today or tomorrow, but may fail in 15 to 20 years from now. Bob's role on Cru's leadership development team is to recruit outstanding leaders from business, education, government and medicine, military, and nonprofits to coach Cru's leaders every other week via Skype video. In 2012, Bob started his blog, leadingwithquestions.com, as a way to better connect with his target audience, Cru's emerging leaders who are the 20 to 30-somethings. Today, his blog provides a continued source of new tools, new questions for all of Cru's coaches and leaders, and is viewed by leaders in more than 170 countries. Bob and his wife Sherry are proud parents of 4 adult children and super proud grandparents of 6 incredible grandchildren, all of whom love to ask their Papa Bob questions. Bob Tiede, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Jim, I am so ready and so excited to join today the Fast Leader Legion.
And I'm glad to have you. Now, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Well, you really mentioned my mission statement is developing the next generation of leaders for Cru. And as you shared, it's true not just of Cru, but every organization. 15 to 20 years, almost every one of the current leaders will no longer be leading. And, you know, history is filled with stories of organizations, companies, churches, parachurches, once great, thriving, vital. 15 to 20 years later, they may not even exist or a shell of themselves. And when you dig around, one of the things you find is that there was no preparation of the next generation to lead.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. I look at a lot of the statistics associated with, what our CEOs focusing in on, and one of the things that's really been top of mind and top of the list for the past several years is this whole, leadership pipeline, leadership bench strength. All of those things associated with what you're talking about. However, when you start looking at the amount of money that's really invested by a lot of organizations, and it varies by, different countries, as far as what the spend is, but it really is a lot of money. But when you look at the effect or the impact on, that next generation of leaders, they say that the performance is so poor. Why is that?
Tell me more, Jim. Help me understand the question just a little bit more.
Oh, you're the master of asking questions. I should have known that was coming. So for me, when you start looking at the return on investment on leadership development, it's very low. Why is it low?
Well, I'll hazard a guess. And Jim, we launched our current leadership program in 2005. We took about a year to develop it. And we still don't have a perfect program, that is for sure. In fact, there's a quote from the World War II General George Patton. He says, "An imperfect plan violently executed today is far superior to a perfect plan when it's too late." And so our commitment was we're going to launch this thing, and then we're going to evaluate it and improve it and relaunch it and keep on going. But we came up with two components that I think make an incredible difference. And Jim, I'm going to ask you a really silly question. If I didn't know how to swim and I wanted to become a swimmer, is there a book you could recommend that if I just read that book, I could then say I'm a swimmer?
Yeah, of course not.
Okay. How about a video series? Maybe a video that would show all the gold medal swims from the last Olympics. If I watched all of those videos, could I then call myself a swimmer?
Well, I'll even say that when I was a kid, I had Mark Spitz poster on my wall with all of his gold medals for many years, and I still never got good at swimming.
Yes. If I want to become a swimmer, what do I need to do?
You got to practice.
I got to get wet.
Yes, got to get wet.
I got to get in the water. And I think a lot of leadership development programs, this is my guess, focus on what I would say, read the book, watch the video. And those are helpful, but unless you get in the water with whatever that is, you can't call yourself a leader. The only way a leader can learn to lead is to start leading. And so one of the things we do in our leadership program is action learning. We put them in groups of about 5 or 6. We usually have 4 of these teams, and each one of them is given a challenge, a major challenge facing our organization. And so in other words, it's not a case study. It's not busy work. This is real stuff. And they're given 6 months, 20% of their time, basically a day a week, to do all the due diligence to come up and 6 months later to present to the leadership of Crew their solution. Now, we are now in our 6th iteration of this, and action learning has been a game changer because it actually allows them to get in the water. And the second thing, and when you were introducing me, you mentioned this, is we recruited outstanding leaders from outside our organization to coach every other week our leaders. And Jim, I'll ask you another question. You may have a coach, but if you had somebody you met with every other week and they just asked you these 3 questions. First question, Jim, last time we were together, you said that by today, you wanted to make progress in A, B, and C. Tell me how that's gone. Now, mind you, they didn't tell you what you needed to do. Last time you said, here's what I want to do. Second question, can we confirm when we're meeting again? It may be same time, same place 2 weeks from today, but you asked to confirm. Third question, Jim, by then, what further progress do you want to make? Mind you, I'm taking notes because that'll be my first question 2 weeks from now. Those 2 things have been game changers in developing leaders. Now, do we have it perfect now? No. But do we feel really good about the investment we're making, that it's actually making a difference? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you brought up, as I was, thinking, and thanks for sharing that. As I was thinking about what you were saying, I started thinking about the distinction between what is training and what is, mentoring and what is coaching. And those 3 questions are more coach-based because you're not putting in the answers.
Correct.
All you're doing is working with what's already inside. And that's a key distinction, I think, that we really have to make these days with a lot of folks because they essentially want to tell people what they're supposed to be doing. And therefore, there's no thinking that's involved. And so we're not depositing in them. We're essentially, just giving them all the answers, and therefore they don't have to come up with them themselves. And I think that is something that stifles a lot of growth and leadership opportunity in a lot of folks. So when you start talking about, I think, you talked about, having a particular addiction about being a teller, right?
Jim, I'm a charter member of TA. Now, most people don't know what TA is. They're familiar with AA, for example. I don't mean out of personal experience, but they've heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. Well, TA stands for Tellers Anonymous. And we go to our meetings, and I stand up and I say, my name's Bob. I'm a teller. And they say, welcome, Bob. And the truth is, many, many years of my leadership, I was what you would call a benevolent dictator. I was overly helpful. I was a micro director, a micro teller. If you asked me, Bob, what time is it? I not only told you what time, I told you how watches are made. And, oh, Jim, can I share a really painful story?
You sure can.
About 20 years ago, I was privileged and I was so excited. I had an incredible leader volunteer at no cost to join our development team, our fundraising team. He had recently retired as one of the top 5 leaders at JCPenney's. Fabulous company. He was the international executive VP. 2 years later, he resigned. And a bit after that, I discovered the reason he resigned. He said in his entire career, he had never served under someone who so told him step by step what he needed to do. And I thought I was being helpful. But it was like, I was saying, well, here, A, B, C, D. It was almost like, here's another word picture. I'm not an artist. And so if I see something that is, draw this picture by connect the dots, go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, that's kind of fun. But if you're an artist and you worked in a art studio and they insisted that you draw your pictures that way and somebody else, designed them, you wouldn't stay there very long because, where is the chance to flourish yourself? Well, at that point, I really didn't understand. I really didn't. It was much later that I understood that being overly helpful, because again, I even look back now and say, I don't think my heart was wrong. I was just stupid. But being overly helpful actually diminishes people. It doesn't let them grow. It doesn't let them flourish. And they don't own what they hear somebody else tell them to do. And so it was much later. In fact, I'd actually moved into this role. And in 2006, I came across a book, perusing a bookstore. I came across a book called Leading with Questions by Dr. Michael Marquardt. As I perused that book in the bookstore, I only read a few pages and said, this one's going home with me. And took it home, and it was a page turner. And reading that book forever changed my leadership. Because as I read that book, I had the aha, and I've shared that awful experience. I mean, imagine losing a talent like that because you are being overly helpful. And but I understood what I'd done wrong, and saw this new paradigm that great leaders lead with questions. In the book, there was a quote. There's many quotes, but I love this quote from Dr. Peter Drucker. The leader of the past may have been a person who knew how to tell, but certainly the leader of the future will be a person who knows how to ask. And at any rate, as I grabbed that new paradigm in my leadership development role, I began to teach out of that book, do presentations, put them together. They were so well received. And one example, I had been with the global operations team of Crew, and I was there for another meeting. But the next morning, kind of at check-in time, I was not going to speak that morning. I'd spoken earlier. But during the check-in time, one of the colleagues on that team, a wife, a mother, not my wife, but on the team, she volunteered this. She said, I've got to thank Bob. She said, last night, I think I had the best conversation with my son that I've ever had. Now, her son was like 2 years out of the university, was already succeeding as a young professional. But what she said is, every time we get on the phone, my son will mention some topic, and I will then tell him what he needs to do. She said, last night, when we got on the phone, he mentioned a topic, and I said, tell me more about that. And then he did. And I said, well, what do you think you ought to do? And she just shared that all she did was ask basic questions. And she said, I think it was the finest conversation I've ever had. Thank you so much, Bob. Well, I turned around and said, well, let us thank Michael Marquardt for writing the book.
Thanks for sharing that. You got me to start thinking about a couple instances with certain individuals that I've had to where I've attempted to ask the questions so that they can answer them for themselves. However, it's almost a situation to where two things. One was a choice. They chose to just give me the answer. I need to hurry. I need to go. And the other is it was an older person that I think they had become so conditioned and brainwashed to have answers be given to them that when I started asking those questions, they seemed like a lost soul. So how do you reprogram or program somebody to actually answer questions that you are given to them?
That's a great question. I want to make kind of a comment. I've seen this in my research that the average, like 4-year-old asks over 200 questions a day. And then we send them to school. And in most, again, well-meaning teachers, now it's a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old is asking a lot of questions. And the teacher at some point says, Johnny, it's my job to ask questions. It's your job to answer them. And over time, they get reprogrammed. I'm told that the average college graduate only asks 20 questions a day. And so we really do have this what's happening in the education system is don't ask questions, give answers. And so reprogramming that can be difficult. What I find is starting with the simplest questions is what works best. And for example, in my book, Great Leaders Ask Questions, which by the way is a free ebook on my blog. But in that book, I share that I can teach anyone to lead with questions in 30 seconds. Can I try that with you, Jim?
Let's do it.
Okay. I want you to memorize my 4 favorite questions. I'm going to share them with you, and we'll see if 30 seconds later you can restate them back to me. Here's the first question. What do you think? And of course, in a situation, you would add about whatever's on the table. What do you think is the best way forward with this client? What do you think we could do about this? So it would be related. But the first question is, what do you think? The second one is, what else? The third one is, what else? The fourth one is, what else? Now, Jim, do you have those memorized?
I think I do.
Let's hear them.
I just remember the what else, because it came 3 times. And I know when things are said 3 times, we remember them best. What was the first one again?
The first one is, what do you think?
What do you think?
And then what else? Yes. Now, that may sound funny, but here's what I've discovered is that we all kind of instinctively, when we answer a question, give a safe answer. We're protective of ourselves. It's not a conscious thing. It's a subconscious. And if I say, Jim, what do you think about? And you give me an answer and I say, oh, Jim, that's stupid. Anyone knows that. Well, you're glad you didn't say anything else. But if I say, wow, Jim, tell me more. What else? And you give another answer. And I said, Jim, I'm taking notes. Keep talking. What else? What I've discovered is that you get to the gold nugget on about the third or fourth what else, because they're feeling really safe. It's like, wow, the guy asking must be really smart to keep asking me to keep telling him more. And but by starting that way, in other words, you don't make a big deal out of starting to lead with questions. You don't ask them, and again, you're never trying to ask them a got you question. You're not the 60 Minutes investigator. And you just start, and then you listen, and you appreciate what's being said. Another key that I find, and I shared in my book, is silence is a great tool in asking questions. Many times we'll say, well, Jim, what do you think about? And they're not immediately answering. And so we say, well, and we ask it again, or we stack another question, and because we're uncomfortable with the silence. But if you ask a question, be quiet, let them think. they will answer. And sometimes the longer the silence, the better the answer. So, Jim, that's not a perfect solution. You can't make somebody talk that doesn't want to. But if you start simple, give them time, appreciate what they say, you'll begin to make progress, I think, with almost anyone.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So, there's a couple of things that I pulled out as you were talking. One is, be authentic with your listening. Don't judge. And I think that's important because you want to be able to build that trust and be patient. You got to wait them out, I guess, if you want the questions or if you want the answers, right? You got to wait them out. So I know you have a lot of things going on. I know you've been with the crew goodness, having a 45-year career with one organization is just unheard of these days. But you've got the grandkids, you got a lot of things going on. So tell me, Bob, when you think about your goals, what else?
Well, Jim, it's interesting. As I shared, my mission really is developing the next generation of leaders for crew. When I look at those 6 grandkids, sometimes, Jim, when I'm doing a presentation, I would say, and they don't know the next slide coming up, but I'll say, we've identified what we think are the 6 highest potential future leaders. Would you like to see who we've identified? And of course, the audience says yes, and the next slide's my grandkids. And so we are focused on developing them, of course, age appropriate. But Jim, another thing that has become a sweet spot, you mentioned I started this blog, leadingwithquestions.com. I did it just as a better way to connect with the young emerging leaders in our organization, also to provide a resource to the coaches that we'd recruited. And, Jim, I'll make a funny comment. I have no idea how 747 can get in the air, but that doesn't stop me from flying. And this thing called the internet, I still have no idea how it actually works, but it doesn't stop me from using it. And so, you launch this blog, it gets out there, and I'm just blown away that I'm being followed now by leaders from 170 nations. And so another mission statement I have is helping leaders increase their leadership effectiveness times 10. And I really believe it is possible to increase times 10 from moving from the paradigm of leading by telling, like I was, the benevolent dictator, to leading with questions, where we empower our staff to come up with the answers that they then own and are going to be much more motivated to execute on. Plus, we get the best thinking of everyone. Another kind of silly story or question I ask is, Jim, if you were in a boat with all your staff and they all had oars and you were wanting to get across the lake, how many of them would you like to have row with you?
Every single one of them.
Yeah. So I've never had a leader say otherwise, Jim. But I then asked, so why would any of us want to, with our staff, take them on into the future and we're the only one that has an oar in the water? Why aren't we asking them, what do they think? How would they approach this? And in that way, you get the best thinking, the brain power of everyone on your team.
Well, we wish you the very best in all of your what else's, Bob. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Bob, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Bob,
I'm ready to go.
All right, you're ready to hoe down. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
It's simple. I need to become a better listener. There's a quote by David Augsburger said that being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. If you're going to lead with questions, you got to listen, and I have to become a better listener.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Jim, I'm going to say that it's from the brother of Jesus, James, who shares in his New Testament book. He shares this: you have not because you ask not. If you don't ask, the answer is always no, or no input, no insight, thoughts, or wisdom from others. So you've got to ask.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Here's another quote. I don't know who to attribute it to, but the quote is this: none of us is as good as all of us. I love being part of a team. The scripture says that one chases 1,000, but two will chase 10,000. And for a team to fire on all cylinders, everyone oars has to be in the water. And the only way that can happen is where that team culture is one of leading with questions.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Jim, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really believe it's the paradigm that great leaders lead with questions.
What would be one book, and it could be from any genre, that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Jim, I'd like to recommend the book by Dr. Michael Morquart that forever changed my paradigm. And his book is called Leading with Questions. It's now in its second edition. It's an outstanding book.
Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information, including Bob's ebook, by going to fastleader.net/Bob Tiede. Now, you spell Tiede a little bit differently. It's spelled Tiede, Bob Tiede. Okay, Bob, this is my last Hump Day Hold-On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Jim, that's easy. I would take back the paradigm that great leaders ask questions.
Okay, Bob, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with Fast Leader listeners how they can connect with you?
Oh, Jim, it's been great to be with you. And Fast Leader listeners, you can connect with me on my blog, leadingwithquestions.com. Again, leadingwithquestions.com.
Bob Tiede, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.